some balls coming out of Shedeur Sanders at that kid. I'm like, kind of looks like a guy.
Yeah, I'm reading.
He can sling it.
Read the I see him, some of the veterans, how they talk to him, mic'd up, see what he's doing in the community.
Yep. You talking about Njoku there?
Njoku, Mike that. You once you see, different little interactions and things like that, I know he has the talent. We'll see. It'll be a competition that usually brings the best out of guys, especially young guys. So I'm interested to see how that quarterback situation.
I've heard he's been outstanding in the building, and I don't know. There was never no one thought he was this like malcontent or like a bag. It wasn't.
That was the word.
No. The sports media world just got caught red-handed trying to rewrite history, and it's all happening right before our eyes. When Peter Schrager stepped onto the Pat McAfee Show to discuss Shedeur Sanders, he didn't just share his analysis. He flat out lied about what happened during the pre-draft process. But here's the thing. The receipts are all there. The evidence is undeniable, and Pat McAfee himself had to push back against the blatant revisionist history being peddled by ESPN's newest golden boy. What you're about to hear will expose the exact moment when mainstream sports media got caught trying to gaslight an entire fan base. Let's start with what should have been a simple discussion about the Cleveland Browns quarterback situation. The Browns are in an unprecedented position. They're potentially carrying 4 quarterbacks on their roster, which is practically unheard of in today's NFL. We're talking about Joe Flacco, Kenny Pickett, and 2 rookies, Shedeur Sanders and Dillon Gabriel. Peter Schrager, ESPN's newest darling analyst, laid out what seems like reasonable analysis on the surface. He predicted that both veteran quarterbacks, Flacco and Pickett, wouldn't make it to Week 1, suggesting the Browns would keep both rookies and 1 veteran. Standard NFL roster management, right? But here's where things get interesting. Schrager emphasized how important this year would be for both Sanders and Gabriel, being 3rd and 5th round picks respectively. He pointed out that Cleveland has 2 first-round picks coming up, and with teams that aren't Super Bowl contenders, quarterback conversations are always looming. Fair analysis so far. But then came the moment that changed everything. The conversation took a dramatic turn when Pat McAfee started reading some suspicious statistics. Apparently, someone was tracking completion percentages from June minicamp practices, 16 of 18 for 1 quarterback, with only 1 interception seen across all quarterbacks. McAfee himself had to pause and question this level of detail, admitting he'd never seen anyone chart minicamp completion percentages before. But here's where the real controversy erupted. When the discussion shifted to Shedeur Sanders' character and reputation, Peter Schrager made a statement that sent shockwaves through anyone who actually followed the pre-draft process. He claimed, and I quote, that no one thought he was this like malcontent or like a bad person. Hold up, stop right there. Because that statement is not just misleading. It's a complete fabrication of what actually happened. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. The narrative around Shedeur Sanders during the pre-draft process was absolutely brutal, and anyone who was paying attention knows exactly what was being said. We had reports of Sanders being entitled. We had analysts claiming he throws his teammates under the bus. There were anonymous NFL executives going on record saying he made them feel small during interviews. Remember the Giants' Brian Daboll situation? According to reports, they set up a trick play scenario for Sanders, intentionally messed up the play call, and asked him to fix it. When Sanders allegedly got confrontational about the setup, suddenly he was labeled as having attitude problems. Todd McShay reported that Sanders seemed like he didn't want to be there and appeared unimpressed during formal interviews. These weren't casual observations. These were character assassinations being published by major sports media outlets. The narrative was crystal clear. Shedeur Sanders was a prima donna who couldn't handle NFL-level pressure and had serious attitude issues. But now, with Sanders impressing in Cleveland's camp, suddenly Peter Schrager wants to rewrite history. He's trying to tell us that the reason Sanders fell to the 5th round was simply because of an unorthodox pre-draft process.
What y'all said, not you, Peter Schrager, but that's what they said. I don't want to have to pull it. We pulled it up 1,000 times. Y'all have seen it. At this point, if you haven't seen it, go watch my old videos because I've pulled up all the quotes specifically from the Giants. Brian Daboll set up a trick play for him messed up the plays and said, hey, fix it. Apparently, Shedeur Sanders got confrontational. That's not what I said. Those were the anonymous reports. Anonymous reports from Mr. McKay. I forgot his name. Todd McShay. Sorry, McKay.
He wants you to believe it was all about not having a traditional agent, not throwing at the combine, or not participating in certain all-star games. This is textbook gaslighting, and it's insulting to anyone who is actually paying attention. During the draft process, Schrager is betting that you're either too dumb to remember what actually happened or that you weren't following closely enough to call him out on his lies. Here's what really happened. Multiple NFL teams reportedly told Sanders not to work out at certain events. This wasn't Sanders being difficult. This was teams actively discouraging him from showcasing his abilities. Yet now we're supposed to believe his draft position was simply due to unorthodox preparation? Thank God for Pat McAfee, because he wasn't having any of this revisionist nonsense. When Schrager tried to peddle his sanitized version of events, McAfee and his crew pushed back hard. They called out the inconsistencies and refused to let Schrager's lies stand unchallenged. McAfee has been consistent throughout this entire saga. He's acknowledged that Sanders creates great content, but he's also been honest about his initial preference for Will Howard. That's the kind of authentic analysis we need, not this corporate-approved revisionist history that ESPN is trying to force down our throats. The pushback was immediate and necessary, because when mainstream media tries to gaslight an entire fanbase, someone needs to stand up and say absolutely not. But here's what's really happening behind the scenes, and this is where it gets truly sinister. ESPN and the NFL are quickly realizing something that should have been obvious from the beginning. Shedeur Sanders is profitable, massively profitable. The viewership numbers, the social media engagement, the buzz he generates, it's all translating to real money. And now that they see the dollar signs, suddenly they need to change the narrative. They can't have it on record that they systematically tried to tear down someone who's bringing in serious revenue. This is different from other controversial players because responding positively to Sanders' content is easy and profitable. Unlike situations that require actual change or uncomfortable conversations, supporting Sanders just means more clicks, more views, more money. It's the path of least resistance for maximum profit. Let's get real about what happened on draft day. In a quarterback class that was universally considered weak, there is absolutely no football-related reason why Shedeur Sanders should have fallen to the 5th round. None. Look at who got drafted ahead of him. Tyler Shough, a 6 feet 4 inches quarterback with a longer injury history than players who've medically retired, went in the 2nd round. Dylan Gabriel, a 5 feet 10 inches lefty who's bounced between multiple programs, went ahead of Sanders. These weren't football decisions, they were something else entirely. Sanders had the arm talent, the decision-making ability, and the football IQ that teams claimed they were looking for. He could attack the middle of the field, had excellent velocity on his throws, and showed the kind of timing and precision that Kevin Stefanski's offense demands. Yet somehow, 31 teams passed on him multiple times. Now we're seeing what many of us predicted all along. Reports from Cleveland's camp suggest Sanders has been outstanding in the building. Veterans are respecting his work ethic and approach. He's engaging positively with the community and showing the kind of leadership qualities that NFL teams claim to value. Pat McAfee himself acknowledged this transformation, noting how Sanders has changed an entire universe and calling him legendary. This is the same Sanders who was supposedly too entitled and confrontational for the NFL just months ago. The cognitive dissonance is staggering. Either the pre-draft reports were completely wrong, or something else was influencing how Sanders was evaluated and portrayed. That what's happening here sets a dangerous precedent for sports media credibility. If analysts can completely flip their narratives based on profit potential rather than consistent evaluation, what does that say about the integrity of draft analysis and player evaluation? Peter Schrager's attempt to rewrite history isn't just about Shedeur Sanders. It's about whether sports media can be trusted to provide honest, consistent analysis, or whether everything is subject to revision based on commercial interests. When Schrager claims that Sanders' draft position was simply due to procedural issues, he's not just lying about the past. He's undermining the credibility of every future evaluation ESPN produces. Here's what makes this even more ridiculous: the actual competition Sanders faces in Cleveland. Joe Flacco, despite his veteran status, and Comeback Player of the Year credentials, is clearly on the back end of his career. Kenny Pickett has shown flashes but hasn't proven he can be a consistent starter. Dillon Gabriel brings mobility and experience, but the fundamental football skills that NFL offenses require, timing, accuracy, field vision, these are areas where Sanders has shown clear advantages throughout his college career. Yet we're supposed to believe that NFL scouts, who spend millions evaluating these exact skills, somehow missed Sanders' abilities while being impressed by players with more obvious limitations? The timing of this narrative shift tells you everything you need to know about the media's true motivations. When Sanders was generating controversy and negative attention, that was profitable content. Now that he's generating positive buzz and proving doubters wrong, suddenly the media needs to be on the right side of history, but you can't have it both ways. You can't spend months tearing down a player's character and then pretend it was all about procedural draft issues when he starts succeeding. This isn't legitimate analysis. It's corporate damage control designed to protect ESPN's relationship with both the NFL and Sanders' growing fanbase. But what's most insulting about Schrager's comments is the underlying assumption that fans are too stupid to remember what actually happened. He's banking on collective amnesia, hoping that people will accept his sanitized version of events rather than trusting their own memories and the documented record. But fans aren't stupid. They remember the hit pieces, the anonymous sources trashing Sanders' character, and the systematic effort to paint him as unworthy of NFL consideration. They remember because they lived through it, and they're not going to let ESPN gaslight them into forgetting that. Here's the bottom line: what we witnessed on the Pat McAfee Show wasn't just bad analysis. It was a deliberate attempt to rewrite history for commercial purposes. Peter Schrager got caught trying to gaslight an entire fanbase, and thankfully, Pat McAfee had the integrity to push back. The pre-draft character assassination of Shedeur Sanders was real. The reports questioning his attitude, work ethic, and NFL readiness were documented and widespread. And now that he's proving those reports wrong, the same media outlets want to pretend they never existed. Don't let them get away with it. Remember what was actually said. Hold these analysts accountable for their flip-flopping and demand better from sports media moving forward. This isn't just about Shedeur Sanders. It's about the integrity of sports journalism and whether fans can trust the analysis they're consuming. Today, we got a clear answer. When profit is involved, the truth becomes negotiable. But the truth doesn't change just because it becomes inconvenient. The receipts are there, the evidence is documented, and no amount of corporate revisionism can change what actually happened. If this kind of honest breakdown is what you're looking for, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. We're not here to gaslight you or rewrite history. We're here to keep it real, even when the mainstream media won't. What do you think about Peter Schrager's attempt to rewrite the Shedeur Sanders narrative? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and let's keep holding these analysts accountable for their flip-flopping.